And was that more permanent?
So the only way I've ever been able to find, the only words I've ever been able to find to describe this is that after a while, a sense of location came back. So for a while there was no person, no location, simply awareness. And then after a while a sense of location came back, so a sense of awareness being located in a physical body came back.
Must have been quite hard with that sense of location, wasn't it? Wasn't that quite hard in day-to-day life, or did you feel you adapted, or?
No. Well, what do you mean when it came back?
Well, you're saying to start with, you didn't feel a location. I would think that would be quite hard.
Absolutely not. No, because
okay.
Again, it transpires somewhat surprisingly that is completely unnecessary. So everything simply goes on.
And your mind was kind of...
Well, there was no my mind.
But you must have had thoughts.
There were thoughts arising. Language really breaks down in trying to describe this, even if I say that awareness was seen to be everywhere, that's not accurate, because everywhere implies space, and it implies difference in a way. You know, if there's everywhere, then within that there's over here and over there, and even that isn't accurate. It's seen, if you like, there's no space. There is just awareness. There is simply oneness. There is simply non-separation, non-duality. And there was no difficulty in that whatsoever, no. Because again, it was just seen that the sense of being a separate person is unnecessary, let's say.
Okay. And
then when the physical location came back, if you like, the sense of being localized, as I call it, came back, that also was not a problem, because the sense of contraction, the sense of being a contracted individual, had gone.
Okay. Well, it's quite a story.
And it's a common story.
Yeah.
That's something to say as well. And other people describe the indescribable in their own, or attempt to describe the indescribable in their own words. And it is quite easy to recognise, I think, in spite of the different words that are used, it's quite easy to recognise what I'm talking about in many, many, many other descriptions, I think. I think it's easy to recognise it in... say Tony Parsons' description of walking through a park. I think it's easy to recognise in Nathan Gill, another person who's written about non-duality, in some of his description, and many, many other descriptions. You know.
So one thing that I'm interested in exploring more is, like, I think you used the word character rather than personality in your books. Yeah. Do you feel the character that was Richard, was Richard, whatever, do you feel that in itself is still there to some extent?
Absolutely.
Do you feel that...
Not just to some extent, to a very great extent.
Okay, so your preferences and your history, they arise, but you don't feel the necessity to give them energy to... Well, you're smiling now, so just say what you want to say.
Well, I don't know how I describe it. A preference arises, and then it's either acted on or it isn't.
Okay.
That's the best way I could describe it. But that, you see, I would say that is actually what always happens for everyone. It's simply that where there's a sense of a contracted person there, they may be added onto that, this sensation that, you know, oh, I'm choosing to do this, or I'm choosing to avoid that.
But do you feel that character has changed over the last 4 years?
In some ways. But I don't think that there are any. I mean, one of the things I say and I hold to is I feel there are no necessary implications in this whatsoever. In other words, I mean, whatever we want to call this, I mean, or if we give this no name at all, because words like liberation and awakening, in a sense, are nonsense anyway. Whatever we want to call it, or if we give it no name at all, there are no necessary implications in it. There are no necessary rewards in it. There are certainly no rewards for a person. And this is one of the most shocking things that's seen after let's say, 3 decades of following spiritual paths and being quite convinced that there were major goodies to be had for me.
No, I understand
at
that.
the end of it,
Yeah.
really major goodies.
Yeah.
Constant eternal bliss, maybe an enormous golden halo, perhaps a wonderful purple aura.
That's how it's packaged sometimes,
It's how
isn't
it's
it?
packaged,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's
And
seductive.
absolutely, very seductive. And I'd been involved with several different paths which did packages in exactly that way. Yeah.
Richard, do you feel the work that you did over those 30 years, do you think it contributed to what happened? Was there any relationship there?
I think I'd give 2 answers to that question. These may sound paradoxical. I hope they don't sound absolutely contradictory. I mean, the first and the simplest answer I would give is no, absolutely not. There is nothing that the person does, that the apparent person does, that can make the apparent person fall away. So that would be my simplest answer. I would just say no. My other answer would be, I would say it makes no difference, because it's seen that there is absolutely no choice about any of that anyway. So in a sense, I could say, I don't mean this in a kind of dismissive way, but I could say, who cares in a way? Who cares in a way? Who cares whether meditating makes a difference or doesn't, or psychotherapy makes a difference or doesn't, or having our chakras cleansed makes a difference, or going and being blessed by gurus and taking Shaktipat and receiving darshan makes a difference or not? In a sense, I'm saying, who cares? Because there's no choice about any of that. That either happens or it doesn't happen. And one of the things that's seen is that there is nobody choosing to do that. There's nobody causing that to happen. So in a sense, the question becomes irrelevant.
But do you feel that if it, say, happened to you and you had no past history of meditation or any understanding, any framework to understand it, do you think the transformation would have been as smooth? It's been relatively smooth for you, because at least you have a context of which to understand what happens. If it happens out of the blue, maybe that's very difficult.
Well, it's an impossible question to answer. I mean, I don't know is the honest answer to that. But I mean, 2 things I would add to that is that the apparent past, the apparent history of this character might well have made the difference about there being an impulse here to communicate about it. To write books, to give television interviews about it. I mean, this is seen by many, many people who never communicate about it. They never talk about it to anybody because there just isn't that kind of personality there. So maybe the fact that I'd always been a communicator, I'd always been a teacher, and I'd been very involved with spiritual paths, I'd taught meditation for many years, maybe that contributed to let's call it a preference arising for talking and writing about this rather than keeping quiet about it.